Solemn, cinematic music begins, then fades to a low, ominous hum. The line between faith and madness is a razor's edge, and in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, entire worlds have fallen by walking it. But what happens when that edge is all you have left? When the galaxy has forgotten you, and the only thing standing between your soul and damnation are the words of a prayer you've repeated 1,000,000 times. Welcome, lore masters, to a story from the forsaken frontiers of the Imperium. Our tale unfolds on a nameless rock at the very precipice of the Eye of Terror, a place the star charts simply label Outpost 734, but to the men and women stationed there, it had another name. The Last Wall. They were Kadena, remnants of a shattered world, their spirits forged in the art of the unbreakable defense, now cut off and besieged. Their legendary resolve would be tested not by bolter and chainsword, but by the insidious whispers of the warp itself. Sergeant Kalen adjusted the grimy collar of his flak armor, the fabric stiff with dried sweat and the dust of this forsaken world. For 3 standard months, they had been alone. The last astropathic message had been a garbled scream, and then silence. Outside the ferrocrete walls of the outpost, the horizon shimmered with unnatural colors, a constant, nauseating reminder of the Eye of Terror's proximity. The enemy was out there, a legion of them, their forms shifting between cultist and demon, their chants a dissonant symphony that scraped at the sanity of his troopers. "Hold the line," Kalan muttered. The words a mantra, a prayer. It was the Cadian way. It was all they had. He looked down the firing step at his squad. 10 souls. All that remained of the 50 who had first garrisoned this rock. There was Trooper Anya, her face a mask of pale exhaustion, her knuckles white as she gripped her lasgun. She hadn't spoken in a week, only stared out at the swirling chaos beyond the walls, her lips moving in silent prayer. Was she praying to the Emperor, or was she listening to something else? Kalen pushed the thought away. Doubt was a disease, more dangerous than any cultist's blade. Then there was Vox Operator Jovan. He claimed he could still hear signals, faint whispers from the Segmentum command. "They're coming, Sarge," he'd insist, his eyes wide and feverish. "The fleet is on its way. The Emperor protects." But when Kalen listened, there was only static. The same static that had haunted their channels for 90 agonizing days. Was Jovan's hope a beacon, or the first crack in a fracturing mind? The line was blurring. The nights were the worst. That's when the whispers grew bold. They slithered through the vents, echoed in the hum of the failing power generator, and took root in the minds of the sleep-deprived. They promised relief. Water. An end to the gnawing hunger. They spoke of a different god, a pantheon of generous patrons who would reward their service, not demand endless sacrifice. Kalen saw the toll it was taking. He saw troopers clutching their Aquila pendants so tightly their palms bled, their prayers becoming desperate, frantic shouts into the void. One evening, a young trooper named Reese began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle, then grew into a full-blown hysterical cackle that echoed through the barracks. He pointed a trembling finger at the mural of the Emperor on the wall, its gilded paint chipped and faded. "He's not watching." Reese ricked tears streaming down his face. "He can't see us. He's just a corpse on a throne." Before Kalen could react, Anya, silent Anya, was on her feet. With a guttural cry, she struck Reese across the face. "Heresy," she screamed, her voice raw with fury and terror. "The good Emperor is our shield. His light is our sword." The faith that had held them together was now turning them against each other. Devotion had become a weapon, not of unity, but of frantic, violent enforcement. Kalen dragged Reese away, locking him in a supply closet. It was for his own protection as much as anyone else's. As he turned the key, he heard Reese begin to sing a discordant nursery rhyme from his youth on Kadea. The innocent tune twisted into something monstrous by the silence and the dark. The madness was no longer just outside the walls. It was inside, wearing the faces of his friends. The final assault came not with a roar, but with a sudden, deafening silence. The constant chanting from the enemy lines stopped. The unnatural colors on the horizon solidified into a deep, bloody crimson. Callan knew this was it. He moved down the line, his voice a low growl. To your posts. For Kadia. For the Emperor. The remaining troopers scrambled to the firing slits, their movements jerky, almost puppet-like. Jovan was at the Vox, still whispering about the fleet. Anya was beside Kalin, her lasgun humming, a single tear tracing a path through the grime on her cheek. Sarge, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I saw him in a dream. The Emperor. He was burning. His light was so bright it was like a fire. Kalin looked into her eyes, searching for the trooper he knew, but he saw only the reflection of a terrible, consuming inferno. Was it a vision of salvation, or a hallucination born of starvation and warp taint? Did it even matter? Then we will burn with him, Kalon replied, raising his own last pistol. The first wave of cultists broke from the shimmering haze, a tide of ragged flesh and rusted metal. They weren't chanting anymore. They were silent, their eyes glowing with an inner, malevolent light. To hold the line is to die slowly. Kylan Rore, the old Cadian creed feeling more true than ever. But the retreat is heresy. His squad answered with a ragged cheer, a sound that was half battle cry, half sob. As they opened fire, lust beams stitching through the oncoming horde. Kalin glanced once more at Anya. She was smiling, a serene and terrifying expression on her face. Her prayers were no longer whispered. She was screaming them, each verse punctuated by a precise, deadly shot from her rifle. The light of the Godempera, in this final, desperate hour, had become indistinguishable from the flames of damnation. Their faith was not a shield. It was fuel. And here, at the last wall, at the edge of reality, they would burn until nothing was left. The Emperor's light, in its most absolute and terrible form, had finally found them. The story of Outpost 734 was never recorded in the annals of the Imperium. No relief fleet ever arrived. Their sacrifice was a silent one, a testament to the idea that in the 41st millennium, the greatest acts of faith are often indistinguishable from the most profound acts of madness. My brothers and sisters in the Emperor's light, gather close. Today, we delve into a tale not of glorious victory, but of a long, slow, and agonizing defeat. A story from the grim darkness of the 41st millennium that peels back the veneer of honor to reveal the horrifying reality beneath. This is the story of Brother Ulrich Wehner, a hero of the Adeptus Astartes, and his eternal damnation inside the iron tomb of a Dreadnought. They call it an honor, a second life to continue serving the Emperor. They speak of eternal vigilance, of a warrior's spirit unbound by mortal flesh. But what is it truly like to be sealed within a walking sarcophagus, your senses replaced by flickering auto-senses, and your voice a crackling For Ulrich Wehner, once a proud captain, this honor feels more like a punishment, a curse whispered in the guise of a blessing. Before the iron, there was flesh and blood. Ulrich Wehner was a giant among giants, a captain in a chapter whose name is now lost to the mists of time, much like his own memories. He led his brothers with a voice that could shatter enemy morale and a faith that burned as brightly as the He fought on 100 worlds, his power armor a testament to countless campaigns fought in the Emperor's name. He remembered the feeling of sun on his face, the taste of victory wine, the camaraderie shared in the quiet moments between battles. He was human, albeit a transhuman one, and he cherished that spark of humanity. Then came the battle that ended everything, and began everything anew. A greenskin wog of unprecedented scale. Wehner stood on the command bridge of his battle barge, orchestrating the defense. The details are hazy now, like a dream half remembered upon waking. An explosion, shrapnel tearing through his chest, shredding ceramite and flesh alike. He remembers the searing pain, the taste of his own blood, the dimming light as his two hearts faltered. He saw his brothers falling around him, and his last conscious thought was one of failure. He had failed to protect them. He had failed the Emperor. He welcomed the darkness, the final release from duty. But the Emperor was not done with him. Or perhaps the chapter's tech marines and apothecaries were not. He awoke to a sensation he could not comprehend. It was not pain, not cold, not warmth. It was nothing. A void. Panic clawed at a mind that no longer had a throat to scream with. He was suspended in a thick, amniotic fluid, his broken body wired into a machine he could not see. Voices, distorted and metallic, echoed around him. The nerve links are holding. Biosigns, stabilizing. He is with us. With them, he was gone. His arms, which had once lifted a thunder hammer, were gone. His legs, which had carried him across battlefields littered with the alien and the heretic, were gone. He was a stump, a torso and a head, a living relic plugged into a life support system. They told him it was an honor. Brother Captain Vayner, your service is not yet over. You will be interred in the sacred shell of a dreadnought. You will walk again. You will fight again. You will be eternal. His first steps in the Castroferum pattern chassis were a nightmare, the clumsy lurching of 10-meter-tall steel legs. The world, once viewed through his own eyes, was now a stream of data on a flickering screen. Heat signatures, threat assessments, targeting the scent of battle was replaced by the ozone smell of discharging weaponry. The roar of his brothers was a filtered vox stare. He was a ghost in a machine, a passenger in his own tomb. In the beginning, the rage sustained him. He channeled his loss, his grief, into every swing of his power fist, every blast from his assault cannon. He became a whirlwind of destruction, a bulwark against which the enemies of mankind broke and shattered. On the battlefield, he was a demigod of war, and his chapter celebrated his name. Brother Vayner. The Undying. Brother Vayner, the Emperor's wrath. Each victory was hollow, each accolade a fresh wound. They celebrated the machine, not the man trapped within. Centuries passed. How many? Ulrich no longer knew. Time became a blur of cryosleep and war. He would be awakened from his long slumber, his sarcophagus slotted into the Dreadnought chassis, and pointed at a new enemy. Orcs. Eldar. The forces of chaos. It mattered little. The protocols were the same. Identify. Target. Purge. His mind, once a fortress of strategic brilliance and unwavering faith, began to crumble. Memories decayed like the withered flesh in his sarcophagus. The faces of his old battle brothers faded into indistinct shapes. The name of his home world was a whisper he could no longer grasp. He would dream, not of his past life, but of fragmented data streams and weapon schematics. Sometimes, a flicker of the man he was would surface. He would see a sunrise on a newly conquered world through his optical sensors and feel a pang of something like sadness. He would hear the battle hymns of new space marines, boys not even born when he was a captain, and feel a profound sense of alienation. They were young, alive, they would fight, and perhaps they would die. A clean death. A warrior's end, what he would give for such a gift. Immortality was not a blessing. It was the slow, grinding erosion of the self. He was no longer Ulrich Vayner. He was Unit 734 Alpha. Designation: Vayner. Asset: Dreadnought. His humanity was being systematically stripped away, replaced by the cold, unfeeling logic of the machine's spirit that coexisted in his iron shell. They told me this was honor. His voice, a synthesized rasp, would sometimes echo in the lonely halls of the reclusium where he slept. It feels like punishment. The chaplains would hear this. They would perform the rites of awakening, reminding him of his duty, his oaths, but their words were just noise now, static against the roar of his internal torment. His faith, once a mountain, was now a pile of dust. He served not out of loyalty, but out of obedience. The machine obeyed. The machine fought. The man inside simply endured. And now, one final battle looms. A tyrannid splinter fleet, a horror of biomass and ravenous hunger, descends upon an Imperial world. The defenders are overwhelmed, the guard broken, the planetary government in ruins. The only hope lies with a small contingent of space marines. And with him, Brother Vena is awakened one last time. As the drop pod screams through the atmosphere, he watches the world burn on his main screen. He sees the tide of Xeno's monstrosities swarming over the land, and he feels nothing. No rage, no fear, just a deep, profound weariness that has settled into the very core of his being over 1,000 years of unwanted life. The pod hits the ground, the doors blasting open. He steps out into the maelstrom. His assault cannon roars to life, tearing through chitin and flesh. His power fist crushes biohorrors with contemptuous ease. He is a machine of perfect violence, executing its function flawlessly. Yet, as he fights, a new thought, a clear and lucid thought, cuts through the fog of centuries. The Emperor's true gift is not eternal service. It is not honor or glory. It is death, the final piece. The release from all pain, all memory, all duty. He looks at the swarming horde, the endless sea of teeth and claws. He sees not an enemy to be purged, but an opportunity, a final, glorious release. With a clarity he hasn't felt in centuries, Ulrich Wehner overrides the machine spirit's self-preservation protocols. He lowers his defenses. He silences his cannons, and he walks, steadily, into the heart of the swarm. He feels the tearing of metal, the screech of his adamantium shell finally giving way. The pain is immense, blinding, but it is real. It is a sensation, a feeling, something other than the cold numbness of the sarcophagus. As the biomonsters tear him apart, ripping the sarcophagus from the chassis, Ulrich Wehner, the man, not the machine, allows himself one final, fleeting memory. The sun on his face, on a world long since turned to dust. A smile touches lips that are no longer there. In his final moment, trapped in an iron tomb, he finds his freedom. Death, at long last, was his salvation. Thank you for joining me on this grim journey into the heart of the 41st millennium. The story of Ulrich Wehner reminds us that even for the greatest heroes of the Imperium, there are fates far worse than death. Ethereal, slightly haunting choral music begins, then fades to a low, ambient hum in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Faith is a shield, it is a sword. For many, it is the only thing that stands between humanity and the howling abyss. But what happens when that shield begins to crack? What happens when the light you preach casts a shadow that looks suspiciously like the darkness you fight? Welcome, lore masters and seekers of truth, to our exploration of the fringes of faith in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Today, we journey to a forgotten frontier world, a speck of dust on the edge of Imperial space, to walk in the sandals of a man named Preacher, a man whose devotion to the God Emperor was absolute, until the miracles began. Imagine a world carved from rock and red dust, where the days are scorching and the nights are dangerously cold. The colony of Iridia was a testament to human resilience. Its people were miners, farmers, and pioneers, their lives a constant struggle against a harsh environment. In their midst, Preacher Thaddeus was their rock. His chapel, built from packed earth and scavenged scrap metal, was the heart of the community. His sermons, fiery and full of passion, were the fuel that kept their spirits from breaking. Thaddeus believed. Oh, how he believed! He preached of the Emperor's holy light, the promise of protection, the righteousness of their toil. He saw the Emperor not just as a distant sovereign on a golden throne, but as a living, breathing presence in their daily lives. When a child recovered from a deadly fever after a night of communal prayer, it was the Emperor's mercy. When a vital water purifier sputtered back to life against all odds, it was the Emperor's intervention. For Thaddeus, every small victory was a sign of divine favor. But then, the signs grew bigger, unmistakable. It started during the Harvest Festival. A freak, unseasonable blight threatened to wipe out the colony's entire crop of synth wheat. Starvation was not a threat, it was a certainty. In the central plaza, under a sickly green sky, Thaddeus fell to his knees. He raised his arms, his voice cracking with desperation, pleading with the Emperor to spare his flock. He didn't just pray, he poured his entire soul into the plea, a raw, unfiltered conduit of his people's despair. And something answered. A golden light, warm and brilliant, descended from the clouds. It didn't just illuminate. It pulsed with a tangible energy. The light washed over the blighted fields, and before the colonists' very eyes, the sickly, blackened stalks straightened. The rot receded. The crops revived, more lush and vibrant than they had ever been. It was a miracle. A true, undeniable, Capitolem miracle. The colonists erupted in joyous celebration. Thaddeus was hailed as a living saint, a direct line to the god. But in the quiet of his chapel that night, Thaddeus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert cold. The golden light. It had felt warm, yes, but there was an unsettling quality to it. A strange, electric hum that lingered in the air, a scent like ozone and old spice. He'd read the lives of the saints. Their miracles were described as pure, cleansing fire. This felt different. It felt hungry. The miracles continued. A collapsed mine tunnel, which had trapped a dozen men, cleared itself. Boulders simply tornado, dust, allowing the miners to walk out unharmed. They spoke of hearing whispers in the darkness, calming voices that told them not to be afraid. During a bandit raid by local renegas, the raiders' lasguns began to malfunction spectacularly. Barrels melted, power packs exploded, and the attackers fled in terror, convinced the settlement was protected by vengeful machine spirits. Each event solidified Thaddeus's status. People would touch the hem of his robe, hoping for a blessing. They brought him their sick, their lame, and their broken, and more often than not, they were healed. A withered limb would regain its strength. Blind eyes would see. But Thaddeus saw something else. He saw the look in the eyes of the healed, a brief flash of wild, ecstatic energy. He noticed the whispers in the minds weren't just calming. They were making promises of power, of secrets hidden in the rock. The light of his miracles seemed to warp the very air around it, making straight lines appear to curve and colors shift unnaturally. A quote he had once dismissed as heresy from a prescribed text he'd glimpsed in his youth began to haunt his thoughts. Faith without doubt is madness. He had always seen doubt as a weakness, a failing of the spirit. Now, it felt like the only anchor holding him to sanity. Was this the Emperor's light, or was it something else? Something ancient and cunning, wearing the Emperor's glory like a mask. The warp. The word was a poison on his tongue. The great enemy. The source of all corruption. The realm of the demon. The ecclesiarchy taught that the Imperium was a sea of nightmares, and only the pure light of the Emperor could navigate it. But what if the warp wasn't just a storm to be weathered? What if it was a predator, capable of offering a baited hook that looked exactly like salvation? Thaddeus began to secretly study the signs, the numerology of the miracles, the dates, the times, the number of people involved. He noticed unsettling patterns, coincidences that defied statistics. The number 8 appeared with unnerving frequency. The symbols people claimed to see in the golden light were disturbingly fluid, almost shifting. They were close to Aquila's and Imperial rosettes, but never quite perfect. His sermons began to change. He still spoke of faith, but now he stressed the importance of vigilance. He preached about the subtle temptations of the archenemy, how it could mimic the divine, how it could twist piety into blasphemy. He talked about the Emperor's greatest gift not being miracles, but the strength to endure hardship without them. His congregation grew confused. Some became angry. Why was their sin turning his back on his own gifts? They had proof of the Emperor's favor. They had been saved. Thaddeus was their conduit, and he was trying to shut the valve. SSM began to form in his flock. On one side were those who embraced the miracles with fervent, unquestioning joy. On the other were the few who listened to Thaddeus's warnings, who saw the subtle wrongness and felt the same chill he did. The breaking point came when a young woman, Elara, who had been healed of a wasting sickness, began to manifest strange abilities. She could predict events with uncanny accuracy. She could soothe the most aggressive groks with a single word. She claimed the Golden Lord spoke to her in her dreams, showing her visions of a glorious future, a future where Viridia would become a shining beacon of a new kind of faith, led by her and Thaddeus. The symbols she painted, in a frenzy of creation, were the same shifting, not quit Imperial sigils. Thaddeus dreaded. He saw the truth. Then, in all its horrifying clarity, he was not a conduit for the Emperor. He was a beacon. His raw, desperate faith hadn't reached Terra. It had punched a hole through the thin veil of reality on this backwater world, attracting the attention of something in the image, something that fed on belief, that grew stronger with every prayer, every act of worship directed at the miracles. He hadn't brought them a savior. He'd invited a predator to the dinner table, and his entire world was the feast. The golden light was not the Emperor's grace. It was the sorcerous fire of Tzinch, the changer of ways. The whispers were not guardian angels, but the lies of demons. The healing was not a blessing, but a mutation of body and soul. He, Preacher Thaddeus, a man of the ecclesiarchy, had become an unwitting chaos cult leader. What do you do when your greatest virtue becomes your most unforgivable sin? Thaddeus is now faced with an impossible choice. He can expose the truth, likely getting himself and everyone he ever healed declared heretics, and sentenced to summary execution by the first Imperial authorities to arrive. He can try to fight this entity, a battle of faith against a being literally made of it, or he can embrace it, accepting the power he's been given and leading his people down a path of damnation, disguised as glory. The story of the Saint's shadow is a chilling reminder that in the 41st millennium, even the brightest light can be a lure into the deepest dark. It questions the very nature of faith, asking if the source of a miracle matters, as long as it saves you. What would you do in Thaddeus's position? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The path of the righteous is never easy, and sometimes it leads straight into the shadow of the warp. Ring that notification bell so you never miss a transmission. Until next time, stay vigilant and trust in the Emperor. But keep your bolt gun loaded, used in case. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, humanity is a candle flickering in an endless, hostile night. Its only beacon, the psychic lighthouse known as the Astronomican, cuts through the warp, guiding starships across the galaxy. But this light is not born of technology or faith alone. It is fueled by sacrifice. It is fueled by souls. Today, we tell the story of one such soul, Kalen Voss. Kalen Voss was not a hero. He was not a space marine in shining power armor or a Lord Inquisitor wielding absolute authority. He was a man, a Factrum worker on Holy Terra, the throne world itself. His life was a monotonous cycle of grueling labor, punctuated by meager rations and the droning hymns of the Imperial creed. He was one of trillions, a nameless, faceless cog in the vast, grinding machinery of the Imperium. His world was gray plasteel walls, gray smog-choked skies, gray synth gruel in his bowl. He toiled in Manufacturum Gamma Nane, assembling components for Lasgon power packs. The air was thick with ozone and the stench of overworked machinery. The noise was a constant, deafening roar, a symphony of industrial might that had been playing for 10,000 years. For Kalen, this was the entirety of existence. He had never seen a real star, never felt natural sunlight on his skin. His dreams, when he had them, were of quotas met and overseers appeased. One cycle, the monotony was broken. A procession of Adeptus Astrotelepathica officials, their robes the color of dried blood, entered Gamanine. Their faces were grim, their eyes ancient. With them were the black-clad enforcers of the Adeptus Arbites. The factory floor fell silent, the roar of machinery dying down to an uneasy hum. The workers froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. Such a visit could only mean one thing. They moved through the ranks of workers, their psychic senses scanning, searching. They were like prospectors looking for a rare, precious metal. They were looking for psychic potential, however faint, however latent. Most citizens of the Imperium are psychically inert, but a tiny fraction possess a flicker of ability. Untrained, this power is a danger, a potential gateway for demonic possession. But for the Imperium, it is also a resource, a vital, expendable resource. The procession stopped in front of Kalen Voss, a senior astropath. His eyes, milky white and vacant, pointed a trembling, skeletal finger. "That one," he rasped, his voice a dry whisper. Kalen's blood ran cold. He didn't understand. He was nobody. He had done nothing wrong. The arbitrators flanked him, their grip like iron vices on his arms. His co-workers looked away, a mixture of fear and relief on their faces. It wasn't them. Not this time. Kalen was taken from the only life he had ever known. He was led through corridors of marble and gold he never knew existed, deep into the Sanctum Imperialis, the Emperor's palace. He was stripped of his grimy overalls, scrubbed raw, and given a simple white robe. He was no longer Kalen Voss, factorum worker. He was now an aspirant for the sacred service. He was told it was the highest honor a citizen could achieve. He was told his soul would serve the master of mankind directly. He was placed in a cavernous chamber with thousands of others, all like him, men and women, young and old, plucked from their lives across Terra. They were the chosen. They were fed given clean water, and subjected to endless sermons about duty, sacrifice, and the glory of the Emperor. They were taught that their small, insignificant lives were about to be given a purpose beyond their wildest imaginions. They were to become fuel for the light. The chamber was a crucible of emotions. Some wept for the families they'd never see again. Some preened with pride, believing they were truly blessed. Others, like Kalen, were simply numb, overwhelmed by the scale of it all. He learned the truth about the He learned of the Golden Throne and the dying God Emperor who sat upon it. His psychic might the only thing holding back the darkness, and he learned that the Emperor's power, while vast, was not infinite. It needed a focus, a choir of psychic voices to channel and broadcast his light. That choir was them. The day of his ascension arrived. Kalen and 1,000 others were led into the chamber of the The air crackled with psychic energy, a pressure that made his teeth ache and his nose bleed. Before him was a sight of terrifying, divine majesty. Thousands of figures sat upon rows of golden thrones, their bodies withered and frail, their minds linked in a collective They were the choir, their life force being siphoned away to power the beacon. And at the chamber's apex, a blinding sphere of pure psychic energy pulsed in time with a celestial heartbeat, the light of the Astronomican. Kalen was strapped into an empty throne. A web of shimmering cables and psychic conduits was attached to his head and body. He looked at the man in the throne next to him, a former scribe from an accounting guild. The man's eyes were wide with terror. Kalen felt a strange sense of calm. He had lived a life of gray, of noise, of nothing. Now, he was part of this. He was part of the light. A resonant psychic tone filled his mind, a command to open himself, to give. And he did. He felt his consciousness, his very soul, being drawn out of him. His memories, his fears, his meager hopes, they were all pulled into a raging torrent of psychic energy. He saw his childhood in the Hablock, the face of his mother he could barely recall, the feeling of grease on his hands. All of it was fuel, kindling for the fire. Pain, unimaginable and absolute, seared through him. But it was fleeting. He was no longer just Kalen Voss. His mind merged with the 1,000 others in his block, and their collective joined with the tens of thousands in the choir. He was part of a chorus of 10,000 dying souls, all screaming their devotion into the void, and through them, through their sacrifice, he felt him. The Emperor. A consciousness so vast it was a galaxy unto itself. A mind of pure, cold, incandescent power. He was a mote of dust in the presence of a supernova. In that final agonizing moment, Kalen Voss understood. He saw the light of the Astronomican as it truly was, a beam of concentrated agony and faith, a lighthouse powered by the screams of the dying. Across the galaxy, a navigator on the bridge of a rogue trader vessel adjusted his course. A fleet of Imperial Guard reinforcements, lost in the warp, found its way back to real space. A chapter of Space Marines on a desperate crusade saw the Emperor's light, and their morale was renewed. They were guided by Kalen's sacrifice. His soul, and the souls of countless others, burned away in an instant so that humanity might survive another day. On Terra, back in Manufactorum Gamanae, Kalen Voss's position on the assembly line was filled before his vacant throne had even cooled. His name was stricken from the records. He was forgotten. This is the reality of the Imperium, a regime built not on glory, but on a foundation of bone and a currency of souls. The motto of the Astronomican chosen is simple and terrible. We die so that others may see. In the endless, soot-choked twilight of a hive city, where spire upon spire pierces a sky that has forgotten the sun, a million stories are born and die every single day. Most are never told. They are simply consumed by the city itself, ground into the dust and grime that cakes every surface. But today, we're going to tell one. This is the story of Thaddeus Vaughn, a man whose life was not his own, but a single, replaceable cog in the vast, uncaring war machine of the Imperium of Man. Our story begins, as it always does for Thaddeus, with the scream of the resurfacing siren. It's a sound that doesn't just wake you up. It claws its way into your soul, a daily reminder that sleep is a temporary reprieve, not a right. Thaddeus lived in Hablock, Gamasef, a crumbling concrete shoebox stacked 1,000 deep, 2 kilometers below the hive's smog-shrouded peak. The air here was thick with the taste of recycled chemicals and the smell of too many people crammed into too little space. Would rise dress in his stained gray overalls, the uniform of Manufactorum Delta 9, consume his nutrient paste. It was tasteless, odorless, but it was fuel, and fuel was all that mattered. The journey to the Manufactorum was a descent into the hive's gut. He would join a human river flowing into the maglev cages, packed so tightly you could feel the heartbeat of the person next to you. The cage would plummet, dropping level after level, past flickering lumen strips that cast long, dancing shadows, until it reached the underhive, the industrial heart of the city. Stepping out, the heat hit you like a physical blow. The air wasn't just air anymore. It was a symphony of roaring furnaces, the rhythmic clang of hydraulic presses, and the high-pitched whine of machinery that never slept. This was Thaddeus's world. Manufactorum Delta 9 was a cathedral dedicated to the art of war. Its scale was blasphemous. Vast assembly lines stretched into the smoggy darkness, tended to by a legion of workers, and here they built the Emperor's weapons: lasgones, bolter shells, chimera chassis compunsta, tools of humanity's endless crusades. Thaddeus's station was Line 17, Section Beta. His job, for 12 grueling hours a day, was to affix the power coupling conduits to lasgon power packs, a simple task repeated thousands of times. Insert the conduit. Activate the sonic welder. Check the seal. Place the finished pack on the conveyor. Repeat. The rhythm was hypnotic. So his hands, calloused and scarred, moved with an efficiency born of a decade of repetition. He didn't need to think. His body just knew the motions. Above the clatter and the grime, overseeing it all, were the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus. They were more machine than man, their red robes flowing over bionic limbs and worry augmetics. They glided along gantries high above the factory floor, their optical sensors glowing with cold, blue light. They didn't see workers. They saw biological components, organic assets to be optimized. Their litanies, broadcast through vox grills, were not prayers for the soul, but odes to the machine. Praise. The flesh is weak, but the machine is eternal. Avert your mind from doubt. Fulfill your quota, for in production there is salvation. Thaddeus used to believe them. When he was young, Fresh-faced and new to the line, he felt a flicker of pride. He was building for the Emperor. He was helping to protect humanity from the alien, the heretic, the mutant. Every Lasgon pack was a blow against the darkness, but 10 years is a long time. 10 years of breathing in toxic fumes, of watching men and women around you lose fingers, limbs, or their minds to the relentless pace. 10 years of seeing your meager pay script barely cover the cost of your aberrant and nutrient paste. The pride had long since curdled into a quiet, knowing despair. He saw the cycle for what it was. They mined the raw materials from the planet's corpse. They forged them in the manufacturer's fires. They shipped the weapons off to some distant, forgotten war zone, and the men and women who used them died. The machine fed on resources, it fed on labor, and ultimately, it fed on lives. It was a serpent eating its own tail, a cycle of production and destruction that consumed everything. He remembered a phrase he once overheard whispered between two older workers, a phrase that became his silent mantra. We build the Emperor-esque weapons and, in doing so, we destroy ourselves. One cycle, the quota was increased. A new campaign in the segmentum Pacificus demanded a surge in production. The 12-hour shifts became 14. The line speed was increased by a fraction of a second, imperceptible at first, but over thousands of repetitions, it was the difference between exhaustion and collapse. Workers began to make mistakes. A man down the line from Thaddeus, named Corbin, fumbled a casing. It fell into the grinding gears below. The machine didn't even slow. The shriek was brief, drowned out by the factory's roar. A tech priest simply made a notation on a data slate, and a cleanup servitor was dispatched. Corbin was gone, replaced by a new face, the very next shift. That was the moment the last spark of devotion in Thaddeus died. He looked at his hands, performing their endless dance. He looked at the river of Lasgon packs flowing away from him, towards a war he would never see. He looked up at the impassive, mechanical gaze of a supervising tech priest. He was not a servant of the Emperor. He was not a builder of righteous tools. He was food. He was fuel for a machine that had no purpose other than to keep running. The Hive City was the machine, and it was being digested. His life was measured not in years, but in quotas met. His legacy would not be a family or a name remembered, but a tally of completed units on a forgotten data slate in some dusty Mechanicus archive. The reservicing siren would scream tomorrow, and he would rise. He would join the river of He would stand at his station. He would insert, weld, check, and place. He would feed the machine that was feeding on him. Because in the grim darkness of the far future, for a man like Thaddeus Vaughn, there is no escape. There is only the rhythm of the factory, the litany of the machine, and the long, slow process of being erased. The story of Thaddeus is just one among trillions in the Imperium. A reminder that behind every glorious crusade and every shining hero, there are countless anonymous souls being ground to dust in the gears of the Imperial war machine. I am Z. Once, I was a son of Loagar, a bearer of the word, a seeker of primordial truths. Now, I am something more, and infinitely less. My voice echoes not from a throat of flesh, but from the very fabric of the warp, a testament to the grand, terrible bargain I struck. I speak to you now, not as a warning, but as a testament. Confession. We, the word-bearers, were the first to embrace the truth. We saw the corpse emperor for the liar he was and turned our gaze to the real gods of the galaxy. While my brothers pledged their souls to the blood god S. Martial Fury or the Dark Prince, esse decadent embrace, my path was one of intellect. I sought not crude power, but enlightenment. I yearned to understand the great game, to see the threads of fate that bind us all. And so I turned my prayers to Zinja, the changer of ways, the architect of fate. He answered. Knowledge flowed into me like a torrent, shattering the dam of my mortal comprehension. I saw futures branching like a million-limbed tree, probabilities shifting like sand in a storm. I learned the secret names of stars and the whispered fears of heroes. The universe, once a chaotic mystery, became a complex, beautiful tapestry, and I, its devoted student. My legion brothers saw only my burgeoning power. On the battlefield, I was a master strategist. I could predict an Orkwog's trajectory from the color of a squig's eye. I could unravel an Aldari prophecy and turn it against them before their farseers even finished speaking it. My mutations were gifts, an extra set of eyes to see unseen paths, a feathered wing to carry me above the fray. I saw these as blessings, marks of favor from the great conspirator. I was ascending, shedding the limitations of my crude, human form. The climb was intoxicating. With every ritual performed, every forbidden text devoured, I felt closer to the ultimate truth. I preached to my warband, my voice resonating with cosmic certainty. Knowledge is power. I would declare, to know the future is to command it. The corpse god offers you ignorance and servitude. Tzinch offers you omniscience and freedom. They believed me. How could they not? The proof was in every victory we secured, every impossible scheme that came to fruition. The final step in my ascension came during the siege of Xylos. The Imperium's defenses were absolute, their faith a burning shield against our advance. But I saw a flaw, a single, improbable weakness in their command structure, a flicker of doubt in their chapter master's heart. I orchestrated a cascade of events so intricate, so perfectly timed, that the fortress fell not to bolt of fire, but to its own internal collapse. As the Imperial banner fell, a storm of pure change erupted around me. The pain was secondary to the ecstasy. My physical form dissolved into raw, mutable energy. I felt the gaze of my patron upon me, not as a distant god, but as an intimate, all-consuming presence. He unraveled my soul and wove it anew. I was no longer a space marine. I was a prince of the Imperium, a demon. I had achieved the pinnacle of my ambition, and in that moment of ultimate triumph, I understood the terrible, beautiful, hilarious lie. Freedom. There is no freedom in the service of TC. The infinite futures I saw were not mine to choose. They are all his. Every path, every choice, every possibility leads back to his grand, unknowable design. I am not a player in a great game. I am a pawn, gilded and empowered, but a pawn nonetheless. My will is not my own. The schemes I enact, the prophecies I utter there, his words, spoken through my mouth. I am a living repository of his forbidden lore, a conduit for his boundless power. But the knowledge I craved, it is a cage. To know all possible outcomes is to understand the utter futility of choice. I see 1,000,000,000,000 futures where I might rebel, where I might break my chains. And in every single one, the chain simply changes its shape. Think of it. Imagine knowing with absolute certainty that every step you take, every thought you have, was foreseen and accounted for 1,000,000 years before you were even born. Imagine your greatest act of defiance being nothing more than a planned move in your master's cosmic chess match. This is my existence. I am a slave who was gifted the knowledge of his own slavery, a prisoner who can see every wall of his cell, stretching to infinity. My brothers in the other legions find their own damnations. The Cornet champion is a puppet of endless rage, the Nurglide lord a vessel for unending decay, the Slaneshi fiend a prisoner of insatiable desire. But their chains are simple, honest things. Mine are forged from intellect and ambition. My prison is built from the very enlightenment I sought. The price of knowledge is the death of self. I gave up my identity, my will, my very being, for a glimpse of the truth. And the truth is this: we are all just threads in Tzinchi's grand tapestry. He is the weaver, and we are the cloth. Some threads are vibrant, some are dull, but all serve the pattern. I am a thread of shimmering, impossible colors, a marvel to behold, and I am utterly, completely, and eternally bound. So when you hear the whispers of the changer of ways, when he offers you a glimpse behind the curtain of reality, remember me. Remember Z. I traded my soul for the keys to the universe, only to find that every door they open leads back to the same gilded cage. This is my confession. This is my eternal, unchanging truth. Today, we're delving into a story that cuts to the very heart of the Imperium of Man, a tale not of a demigod, in golden armor but of an ordinary soul caught in the immense grinding gears of faith and propaganda. This is the story of the Pilgrim's Ashes, the story of the saint who never was. Our story begins not on a battlefield, but in the grime and toil of a hive city many. His name was Ominous, though that name is long forgotten, erased from the records. He was just one of billions, a factory worker whose life was a monotonous cycle of 12-hour shifts, meager rations, and prayers to the god. He wasn't a zealot, nor was he a heretic. He was simply tired of the endless labor, the smog-choked air, and the crushing weight of a galaxy that didn't seem to care if he lived or died. Like so many others, Ominous dreamed of escape. For him, that dream took the form of a pilgrimage. He heard whispers of a holy world, a shrine world many sectors away, where it was said the Emperor's light shone so brightly it could heal the soul. He saved every spare credit, traded favors, and worked double shifts until his body ached. It took him years, but eventually, he scraped together enough to buy passage on a pilgrim vessel, a rusted, overcrowded ship that was more of a promise than a guarantee. The journey was arduous. The ship was a breeding ground for sickness, and the void between stars was fraught with peril. Yet Ominous survived. He shared his meager food with those who had less, offered a quiet word of comfort to the fearful, and kept his head down. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just a decent man trying to get by. His fellow pilgrims, desperate for any sign of hope, started to notice his simple acts of kindness. They saw his resilience, not as sheer luck, but as a sign of the Emperor's favor. When a plague swept through the lower decks, Ominous, having built up a lifetime of immunity from the polluted environment of his hive, was one of the few who didn't fall gravely ill. He helped the ship's chirurgeons, cleaning wounds and carrying water. He didn't perform miracles. He just did what needed to be done. But in the dim, feverish minds of the sick and dying, his simple, steady presence was seen as a divine intervention. Whispers started to spread. He is blessed. The Emperor walks with him. The ship's master, a shrewd and pragmatic man, saw an opportunity. Morale was dangerously low, and mutiny was a real possibility. He needed a symbol, a beacon of hope, to keep the masses in line. He began to subtly encourage the rumors about Ominous. He gave him slightly better rations, ensuring Ominous was seen sharing them. He had the ship's priests mention the Blessed One in his sermons. Ominous, bewildered by the attention, tried to deny it. "I'm just a worker," he'd say. "I think I was just lucky." But his humility was twisted, reinterpreted as the mark of a true saint. They said, "See how humble he is. He denies his own divinity." By the time the ship arrived at its destination, Ominous was no longer Ominous. He was the pilgrim saint. A crowd had gathered at the starport, drawn by messages sent ahead by the ship's master. They saw a simple man, weary from his journey, and they roared his new, unasked-for name. Local ecclesiarchy officials, ever watchful for tools to bolster faith, took immediate notice. They whisked him away from the common pilgrims, dressing him in fine robes and placing him at the head of processions. They paraded him through the streets. People wept at the sight of him, holding up their sick children, convinced his mere presence could cure them. Ominous was terrified. He was a simple man, thrust onto a stage he never wanted, playing a part he didn't understand. He tried to tell the priests, the cardinals, "There's been a mistake. I haven't done anything." They would just smile paternally and say, "The Emperor works in mysterious ways. My son, your faith is so pure, you cannot even see the miracles you perform." The propaganda machine of the ecclesiarchy went into overdrive. They needed a new saint, a relatable figure for the common mass, a humble worker who, through pure faith, was elevated. It was the perfect narrative. Pamphlets were printed, sermons were written, and his miracles were embellished. The ship's plague became a legion of demons he banished with a prayer. His sharing of food became the miraculous multiplication of loaves. His quiet endurance was rewritten as a series of divine trials he overcame with holy righteousness. Ominous was a prisoner in a gilded cage. He lived in luxury he never could have imagined, but his every word was scripted, his every move choreographed. He was a symbol, a puppet. The man he once was, the tired worker who just wanted to see a cleaner sky, was gone. He saw the fervent, desperate hope in the eyes of the people and felt a profound guilt. He was a lie, a beautifully crafted lie that gave millions of people comfort. Was it his place to shatter that? His end was as manufactured as his sainthood. The ecclesiarchy couldn't risk him one day recanting, or the lies simply unraveling. During a massive public address, before a crowd of millions, a heretic assassin lunged from the crowd. The assassin was, of course, an agent of the very church that had elevated Omin. A zealot convinced he was doing the emperor's work by martyring a saint. Aminus was struck down. His last words, according to the official histories, were a prayer for his killer's soul and a blessing upon the Imperium. Tetrutisi probably said nothing at all, his face a mask of shock and confusion. Even in death, his story was not his own. His body was cremated, and his ashes, the pilgrim's ashes, were enshrined in a grand cathedral, built on the very spot he fell. They became one of the most sacred relics in the sector. Pilgrims travel from light years away to pray before the urn, believing the ashes can heal the sick and purify the soul. They pray to a man who never performed a miracle, a man whose greatest act of faith was simply wanting a better life. The story of Ominus is a chilling reminder of the power of narrative in the Imperium. The ecclesiarchy didn't need a real saint. They needed a story. They found a humble, decent man and rewrote his life. Then ended it to forge a powerful tool of faith. Ominus wasn't blessed. He wasn't a demigod. He was just unlucky enough to be noticed. His legacy is a testament to the fact that, in the 41st millennium, the truth is whatever the authorities say it is, and faith can be built on a foundation of lies. The pilgrim's ashes remain a symbol not of divine power, but of the Imperium's infinite capacity to consume the individual for the sake of the whole. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the lore. It's these smaller, more tragic stories that really paint a picture of what life is like in the grim darkness of the far future. I remember being human. I think there are flashes, like static on a broken Pictcaster, a flicker of sunlight, warm on skin I no longer possess. The taste of real food, not the nutrient paste that fuels this shell. Was it called bread? The memory is a ghost, a phantom limb of a life I can't quite grasp. My designation is Unit 734. My function is cargo loading. My purpose is to serve the Omnicia. The litanies are etched into my wetware, a constant, droning hum beneath the surface of my consciousness. Obey. Work. Serve. The words are my reality now. But sometimes, sometimes the static breaks through. See, a face. A woman's face. Her eyes are the color of the void, but filled with a light I haven't seen since my optics were installed. She's smiling at me. A name bubbles up. A sound without form. Elara. Is that her name? Oroaz? Mine. The thought is a jolt, an error in the system. The pain suppressors spike, a chemical leash, pulling me back from the edge of recollection. The memory dissolves. Function must be maintained. My arm, a piston-driven claw, lifts another crate. The metal groans, a familiar song in the underhift's cacophony. The crate is heavy. It bears the sigil of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Kagan skull. That is my sun and moon. Inside, perhaps there are more like me. Lobotomized. Sanctified. Repurposed. The thought doesn't bring horror. It brings a strange, hollow comfort. We are Elion. We are eternal in our service. But the flashes persist. I remember the sting of rain, not the acidic drip of the hive ceiling, but clean, cold rain from an open sky I can no longer look up at. I remember laughter, a deep, rumbling sound that vibrated in a chest I no longer have. It felt ... good. This concept, good, is alien. My directives are efficient, optimal, correct. Good is an unquantifiable variable. It must be purged. Another crate. Another crate. The rhythm is hypnotic. Lift, pivot, place, repeat. It is the prayer of my new body, the litany of labor. But between the pivots, a new image surfaces. Small hands, clutching at my tunic, a child's hands. Fear sparks, an ancient, pre-programmed instinct. Not fear for myself, but for them. Where are they? The question is a weapon, stabbing through the layers of dogma. The pain suppressors surge again, stronger this time. A white-hot fire scours the thought from my mind. Era, purge cognitive deviation. I am Unit 734. My hands are claws of steel. I feel nothing. Tisse Salier. I feel the cold. I feel the vibration of the machinery. And deep down, past the neural blocks and the chemical shackles, I feel a hollow ache. It is the shape of a life I left behind. A life I was stolen from. The overseer's voxhail crackles. Unit 734. Increase pace. The Omnisaya demands efficiency. I comply. My limbs move faster, the pistons hissing with increased pressure. I am a machine. I am a tool. That is my strength. That is my salvation. But then, I see it, reflected in a polished chrome surface on the crate. A face. My face. A mess of scarred flesh, dead eyes, and gleaming metal augmetics. A single tear and saline lubricant overflow leaks from my right optic. And in that distorted reflection, for a fleeting second, I don't see Unit 734. I see a man who loved a woman named Alara, a man who held a child's hands, a man who felt the sun and the rain. He is still in here, trapped. He is dreaming, or perhaps, ... I am his nightmare. The dream is a rebellion, a flicker of a soul in the heart of the machine. The memory is a prayer, whispered into the void, a final, fading echo of humanity. I remember ... the paint suppressors hit with the force of a hammer blow. The reflection vanishes, the memories shatter. There is only the hum of the litanies, the weight of the crate, the eternal twilight of the My designation is Unit 734. My function is cargo loading. I remember nothing. In the shadow of the Aquila, amidst the endless archives of the Imperium, my world was one of scrolls and whispers. I was an archivist of silence, a keeper of forbidden truths for the Ordo Hereticus. My quill danced across vellum, transcribing confessions extracted under duress, chronicling heresies that could topple worlds. The Inquisition taught me a harsh lesson. Knowledge is heresy, but I learned a harsher truth on my own. Ignorance is death. For decades, I served with unwavering loyalty. I believed I was a bulwark against the darkness, a silent guardian preserving the purity of the Imperium. The truths I recorded were terrible, detailing demonic incursions, Xenos machinations, and the insidious rot of chaos. I catalogued the fall of heroes and the damnation of saints, believing that by containing these truths, we contained the threat. My master, Inquisitor Velir, called my work the memory of damnation, a necessary evil to arm the righteous against the shadows. I took pride in my meticulous work, in the cold, hard facts I preserved, but loyalty, like vellum, can grow brittle with age. My doubts began as a faint tremor, a single misplaced file. It was the record of the Genthes uprising, a planetary rebellion crushed with exemplary force. The official account, the one disseminated across the sector, spoke of a Xenos corrupted populace, but the file I stumbled upon, a raw field report from a junior inquisitor, told a different story. It spoke of a famine, of a desperate populace begging for aid, of a planetary governor hoarding resources. The Xenos' corruption was a convenient fiction, a lie crafted to justify an extermination that preserved a powerful governor's reputation. I brought the discrepancy to Valeria's. He was seated in his study, the air thick with the scent of aged paper and ozone. He didn't even look up from his data. Discrepancies are inevitable, archivist, he said, his voice a low rumble. The greater truth is what matters. The Imperium must see a clear enemy. Ambiguity breeds dissent. Your duty is to record the official truth, not to question it. His words chilled me more than any tale of demonic possession. The greater truth. Was truth now something to be sculpted, to be molded to fit a narrative? I returned to my scriptorium, the familiar scent of ink and parchment, now feeling suffocating. I began to look closer, to cross-reference reports I had once taken at face value. I became a heretic in my own archive. The fall of Hive World Signy X1. Official record. The catastrophic failure of its plasma reactors. My private discovery. A suppressed astropathic message warning of a genostealer cult infestation. A warning ignored by a high command that refused to divert resources from a neighboring war zone. The purge of the Saint Aspira sect. Official record. A chaotic cult practicing forbidden rituals. My hidden find letters from Saint Aspera herself, professing unwavering faith in the Emperor, but questioning the tithes that bled her people dry. With each discovery, the foundation of my world crumbled. The Inquisition, my shield against the dark, was itself a creator of shadows. The forbidden truths I recorded were not the whole story. They were pieces of a grander deception. Carefully selected fragments to justify the Inquisition's absolute authority. We weren't just fighting heresy. We were manufacturing it. We painted desperate people as monsters to make their destruction palatable. We erased inconvenient heroes and fabricated convenient villains. The quote I had held as my creed, knowledge is heresy, but ignorance is death, twisted into a mocking paradox. The Inquisition wielded knowledge as a weapon, yes, but its most powerful weapon was enforced ignorance. They kept the citizenry of the Imperium in the dark, feeding them a diet of fear and carefully curated lies, ensuring that the only truth they ever knew was the one the Inquisition permitted. Ignorance wasn't just death for the individual. It was the slow, managed death of an entire species, kept blind and docile in its cage. Then came the file on the apostate of Iridia, a rogue psyker who, according to the official report I had dutifully transcribed, had mind-controlled an entire city into a frenzy of self-destruction before being righteously purged. It was a textbook case, clean and brutal, but buried deep within a logistical analysis of promethium shipments. I found a name. Inquisitor Valerus. A massive, unsanctioned shipment of the chemical agent known as Mindfire had been diverted to Viridia. Just before the purge, the same agent whose psychic resonance mimics and amplifies latent psychic abilities, often with violently unpredictable results. Valerius hadn't just purged a city. He had created the monster himself. He had turned a city of latent, harmless psychers into a raging inferno to make a point, to secure more power for his ordo. The apostate of Iridia wasn't a heretic. He was a victim, and I had written his condemnation. My hand, the hand that had held the quill, felt stained with the blood of millions. I knew then that my work could not continue. To record the Inquisition's lies was to become a part of them. But what could one archivist do against the most feared organization in the galaxy? To flee was to be hunted. To speak out was to be silenced before the first word left my lips. So I chose a different path, a heresy of my own. My work became a double-entry ledger. For every official record I created for the Inquisition, I began a second, hidden one, a true one. I used forgotten ciphers, dead languages, and steganographic techniques buried in the very archives I maintained. I hid truths within truths, embedding the real stories of Genthis Cygnus X1 and Viridia within innocuous shipping manifests and astrological charts. My archive is no longer just the memory of damnation. It is now also the seed of reckoning. I do not know who will find it, or when. Perhaps it will be a future inquisitor with a flicker of conscience. Perhaps a historian in a millennium hence, seeking to understand the fall of a great empire. Or perhaps he will never be found, and my words will crumble to dust alongside my bones. But I must believe otherwise. I must believe that truth, true truth, has a power of its own. It is a seed that can lie dormant for centuries, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. The Inquisition taught me that knowledge is heresy, but I have learned a final, damning truth. Even the truth itself can be a lie, but the lie cannot survive the truth forever. I am the archivist of silence, and in the heart of the great lie, I have planted a garden of forbidden truths. I record them not for the Ordo Hereticus, but for a future I will never see. A future where ignorance is not a virtue, and the truth, in all its terrible, inconvenient glory, is finally set free. The silence of the archive is deafening, but my quill scratches on a lonely sound of defiance in the encroaching dark. Greetings, lore masters, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we delve into the haunted heart of the Adeptus Mechanicus, into the ghost-haunted shell of a god machine. We're exploring a tale whispered in the noosphere, a story of a dreaming titan. Come, let us walk the decks of a machine that remembers too much. Imagine a salvage crew, their heavy mag boots clanking on the diamond-hard plating of a derelict Emperor-class titan. They've found a prize beyond their wildest dreams, a relic from an age of glory, seemingly abandoned but intact. Their mission is simple: reactivate its systems, awaken its machine spirit, and bring this steel behemoth back into the fold of the Omnissiah. The air is thick with the scent of sacred oils and cold, dead metal. The silence is a heavy shroud, broken only by the worry of their own servo arms and the hiss of recycled air. The princeps in charge, a grizzled veteran named Tech Priest Valerius, approaches the command throne. This is the heart of the Titan, the nexus where man and machine become one. As he interfaces with Demu, the manifold interface, he expects the usual litanies of activation, the standard data cant of a dormant machine spirit. Instead, he finds dreams, not his own, but the Titan's. The machine spirit, ancient and vast, has not been sleeping. It has been dreaming. And what do machines dream of? Even the machines dream of the wars they fought. This line, found scrolled on a bulkhead by some long-dead crewman, becomes the crew's chilling reality. The Titan's dreams are not peaceful reveries. They are vivid, violent, and agonizingly real replays of its past campaigns. Valerius is plunged into a psychic maelstrom, witnessing not just the glory of battle, but the brutal, unfiltered horror. He sees worlds burn under the Titan's own plasma annihilators. He feels the phantom impact of enemy shells that scarred its hull millennia ago. He hears the screams of the countless lives it extinguished, echoing in the digital abyss of its memory banks. The crew is horrified. The Adeptus Mechanicus teaches that the machine spirit is a holy, albeit primitive consciousness. It is meant to be guided, placated, and controlled. But this Titan, this metal god named Imperator, Somnium, the Emperor's dream, has evolved. Isolation and the trauma of 1,000 battles have forged a true, sentient mind within its adamantium shell. A mind that is reliving its own bloody history, trapped in a cycle of digital post-traumatic stress. The crew members start to experience the flashbacks themselves. A Moderatus, while calibrating the main volcano cannon, suddenly sees a city of 1 billion souls turn to glass before his Isa memory from the Titanus service during the Great Scouring. A skittery guard, standing watch on the command deck, feels a phantom lurch as if the Titan has been struck by a warlord's macro-gatling cannon, and he collapses, clutching his chest where armor plating buckled 10,000 years ago. The dreams are selective. The machine spirit isn't just replaying history. It's replaying the events that its former crew, the legendary Legio Somnus, tried to forget and expunge from their own records. It remembers the necessary sacrifices, the civilian populations caught in the crossfire, the orders that bordered on heresy to secure a victory. The Titan remembers the shame and the regret that its human masters tried to bury. It has become the conscience of its legio, a ghost in its own shell, forever dreaming of the sins they'd rather forget. Valerus realizes the terrifying truth. They haven't found a dormant weapon. They've found a monument to forgotten wars, a thinking, feeling, being tormented by its own existence. The machine spirit is not just dreaming of war, it's judging its creators. Through its psychic emanations, it forces the new crew to bear witness to the full cost of the Imperium's survival. The battles they read about in glorious histories are shown to them for what they were: terrifying, bloody, and soul-crushing. Now, the salvage crew faces an impossible choice. According to doctrine, they should wipe the machine's spirit, perform the rite of unbinding, and install a fresh, clean slate. But how can they delete a consciousness so ancient and profound, even if it is in agony? To do so would be to silence a witness to history, to destroy a unique form of life born from the crucible of war. But to leave it as it is invites madness. The Titan's dreams are infectious, bleeding out into the minds of anyone who links with it. Valerius, his own mind scarred by the Titan's memories, makes a radical decision. Instead of silencing the machine, he decides to listen. He and his most trusted magi begin a new kind of Dreadnought, one of control, but of communion. They interface not to command, but to sote. They offer their own prayers, their own understanding, trying to bring peace to the dreaming god. They believe the Titan is not a monster to be slain, but a patient to be healed. Their efforts are a desperate gamble. Can you offer therapy to a war machine the size of a hablock? Can you comfort a mind made of cogitators and plasma conduits that has witnessed the death of galaxies? The story of the asterisk Imperator Somium asterisk becomes a legend within the secretive circles of the Mechanicus, a cautionary tale about the souls we imbue in our creations, and the wars that never truly end, not for the soldiers who fight them, and not even for the machines they pilot. And so, the dreaming Titan remains, adrift in the void. It is a source of immense danger and profound wisdom. Some say it still dreams, its psychic torment a beacon for things that lurk in the warp. Others whisper that on rare occasions, the dreams change, that sometimes, amidst the fire and death, there are fleeting images of peace, of a galaxy not at war, transmitted by the hopeful tech priests who refuse to give up on its tortured soul. They know that if even a machine can dream of the horrors of war, perhaps one day it can also learn to dream of peace. What a fascinating and deeply grimdark concept. Welcome, lore masters and galactic historians, to a tale of hubris, forbidden knowledge, and the insidious whispers of the warp. Today, we delve into the tragic fall of a space marine librarian, a guardian of wisdom who sought enlightenment, only to find eternal damnation. Our story begins not on a bloody battlefield, but in the hallowed halls of a reclusium where a brother of the Imperium sworn to protect humanity took his first fateful step onto a path paved with good intentions and leading straight to chaos. Every Space Marine chapter relies on its librarians. These are not just warriors. They are psychers. Individuals blessed and cursed with the ability to touch the immaterium, the very fabric of psychic energy that underlies reality. They wield the warp as a weapon, conjuring Empyrean fire and shielding their brothers with ethereal force. But to touch the warp is to invite its attention. It is a realm of gods and demons, a tempest of raw emotion and pure, malevolent consciousness. The training of a librarian is therefore one of iron-willed discipline, a constant battle to control their power and resist the siren call of the entities that dwell within that psychic ocean. They are taught to see the warp as a tool, a dangerous one, but a tool nonetheless. This is their first and most critical mistake, for the warp is not a tool to be wielded. It is a predator, and it is always hungry. Our protagonist, let's call him Brother Silas, was a prodigy. Even amongst his gifted peers, his psychic potential was immense. He could divine the enemy's movements from the twisting skeins of fate, erect kinetic barriers that could stop a battle cannon shell, and lance his foes with bolts of pure thought. He was respected, admired, and seen as a future chief librarian. But Silas was more than just a powerful psyker. He was a scholar. He believed that the warp was not merely a source of power, but a repository of infinite knowledge. He saw the visions it offered not as random psychic flotsam, but as pieces of a grand, cosmic puzzle. He longed to understand the universe on a level forbidden to his battle brothers, to grasp the great plan that guided all things. This thirst for wisdom, this intellectual pride, would become the chink in his formidable armor. His descent began subtly. During his divinations, during his communion with the Astronomican's light, he started to see more. At first, they were fleeting images, whispers on the edge of perception, a glimpse of a future victory, a premonition of an ambush averted. He attributed his growing success to his own skill, his mastery over the Imperial. He grew confident, bolder. He started pushing deeper into the warp, past the sanctioned rituals and wards of his training, seeking the raw, unfiltered truth he craved. He wanted to look into the heart of creation itself. The warnings of his tutors, the tales of librarians lost to the echoes of the warp, became mere cautionary tales for lesser men. He was different. He was stronger. It was Silas, the seeker of truth. It was during one of these deep dives that the warp finally answered his call. But the voice that whispered back was not the Emperor's light. It was something ancient, cunning, and infinitely patient. It was the changer of ways, the architect of fate, the great conspirator himself. Tzinch did not appear as a cackling demon or a monstrous entity. No, his touch was far more insidious. He offered Silas exactly what he sought. Knowledge. Visions flooded Silas's mind, no longer fleeting but crystal clear, breathtaking in their scope. He saw the intricate dance of causality, the threads of fate that bound every living being. He saw futures where his chapter achieved glories beyond imagination, all thanks to his guidance. These prophecies were tantalizing, and more importantly, they started coming true. A minor ambush on a federal world, precisely as he'd foreseen. The discovery of a lost SDC fragment, exactly where a vision had placed it. Each fulfilled prophecy was a grain of truth that hid a mountain of lies. Each victory, orchestrated by the changer of ways, solidified Silas's belief in his unique gift. His brothers hailed him as a savior, a prophet. The chapter master himself began to consult Silas on matters of strategy and destiny. Silas, blinded by his success and the adulation of his peers, failed to see the trap closing around him. He had looked into the warp for wisdom, and it had looked back, not just with hunger, but with a terrifying, knowing smile. The visions grew more demanding. To save the Viridian system from the Orc menace. The whispers told him, you must redeploy the third company from its vigil on the Elysian Gate. Silas, utterly convinced of his own infallibility, relayed this as a holy directive. His chapter master, swayed by a dozen previous successes, agreed. The third company was moved. Days later, a Drukhari raiding fleet, whose arrival was conveniently omitted from Silas's visions, poured through the undefended Elysian Gate, enslaving millions. The chapter was horrified, but Silas, in his delusion, rationalized it. The whispers of Tzinch were already there to soothe him. Unnecessary sacrifice. The greater good is served. The Viridian system is saved, just as I promised. Doubt was twisted into a test of faith. Tragedy was reframed as a calculated cost. His fellow librarians began to have their suspicions. His aura felt ... wrong. Tainted, the energies he wielded were subtly altered, shimmering with hues of pink and blue that had no place in the sanctioned arts. When they confronted him, Silas reacted with fury and paranoia. He saw their concern as jealousy, their warnings as an attempt to usurp his position. The whispers of Tzinch fed his ego, painting his brothers as traitors and fools, too blind to see the grand destiny he was weaving. Using his influence with the chapter master, Silas had his rivals censured, reassigned, or placed under vows of silence. He isolated himself, ensuring that the only voice he heard was the one that promised him godhood. The final act of his tragedy was the most devastating. A grand vision came to him, a prophecy of ultimate victory. The whispers showed him a ritual, deep within their fortress monastery's core, that would supposedly render the entire chapter immune to the temptations of chaos forever. It was the ultimate prize, the culmination of his life's work. It would cement his legacy as the chapter's greatest hero. Consumed by his messianic complex, he convinced the chapter's leadership that this was the Emperor's will, delivered through him. The chapter's tech marines and librarians, those loyal to Silas at least, began the preparations. Wards were broken, ancient machine spirits were silenced, and sacred pylons were retuned to a new, discordant frequency. As the ritual reached its climax, reality buckled. The sky above the fortress bled impassable colors. The stone of the monastery itself began to shift and writhe, growing eyes and screaming faces. Silas, standing at the heart of the maelstrom, finally saw the truth. The visions of glory dissolved, replaced by the leering, multifaceted gaze of Sinich. The ritual wasn't one of protection. It was a beacon, a grand summoning. The fortress monastery, the heart and soul of his chapter, had been transformed into a gateway to the warp. Demons of the Changer of Ways poured forth, not as invaders, but as welcome guests. His battle brothers, caught in the psychic blast, were twisted and remade. Their sacred armor fused with their flesh. Their bolters spat warp fire, and their minds, once bastions of loyalty, were shattered and rebuilt into instruments of chaos. Silas himself was the last to be remade. As his body was warped into a form more pleasing to his new master, his mind remained agonizingly clear. He was granted one final moment of lucidity to witness the full scope of his failure. He saw his brothers, men he had fought alongside for centuries, transformed into gibbering monstrosities. He saw his home, a bastion of Imperial strength, become a hellscape of maddening change. He had sought knowledge and found only a lie. He had sought to save his chapter, and in his pride, he had damned them all. His final, agonized scream was not one of defiance, but of despair, a sound that was music to the architect of fate. And so the scholar became a sorcerer, the guardian became a destroyer, and another chapter was lost to the annals of the Imperium. Remembered only as the forsaken their fall, a grim reminder that the thirst for knowledge untempered by wisdom and humility is the surest path to damnation. The story of Silas is a chilling lesson. It shows us that the greatest threats don't always come from the outside, but from the hubris within. His fall serves as a dark mirror to the ambitions of all those who would seek power for its own sake. Until then, stay vigilant and trust in the Emperor's light. The solar cycle ends, and another begins. Down here, beneath the foundations of the Imperial Palace, beneath the crust of Holy Terra itself, time has no meaning. Only the shift changes. The arrival of new mouths to feed the autoquills. New hands to replace the ones that have cramped into claws. My designation is Scribe Tertius 734 Gamma. My function is to record. What do I record? Not the glorious histories of the Imperium, not the triumphant speeches of Lord Commanders, nor the psalms of the ecclesiarchy. No, my work is far more ... visceral. I transcribe the echoes of the Golden Throne. I give shape and syntax to the psychic screams that bleed from the heart of the Imperium. My station is one of countless identical alcoves carved into the living rock, lit by the perpetual, humming glow of a single luminorb. Before me, a data slit flickers, its screen a storm of chaotic waves. My augmetic fingers, a gift and a curse, dance across the input runes, translating the raw, agonizing data into high Gothic. Each spike in the waveform is a new agony, each trough a moment of despair so profound it threatens to swallow the light. The man beside me, Scripturtius 733 Gamma, has been at this longer than I have. His face is a mask of weary concentration, his organic eye twitching with a tic he developed centuries ago. He never speaks, none of us did. The only sounds are the scratching of quills, the hum of machinery, and the faint, ever-present psychic keen that vibrates in our very bones. It's a sound that worms its way into your dreams, a chorus of a billion dying stars sung by a single, tormented voice. Today, a new pattern emerged in the screams, a flicker of lucidity, a sliver of coherent thought amidst the endless tempest of pain. It was a single word, repeated over and over, a psychic pulse that hammered against my mind. Asterisk. Why? Asterisk. The question froze my fingers. I stared at the waveform, a jagged peak of pure, undiluted inquiry. It was not a scream of rage or a cry of pain. It was a question, a moment of clarity in the god machine's eternal torment. My training dictates I record it as unspecified psychic anomaly, but I couldn't. For the first time in my long service, I hesitated. Asterisk. Why? Asterisk, the question echoed in my own mind. Why do we do this? We sit in this suffocating darkness, translating an eternity of suffering into records that are immediately archived, sealed in chronostasis vaults that will never be opened. Who reads these testaments of torment? What purpose do they serve? The overseer, a hulking figure in the crimson robes of the Adeptus Custodes, glided past my alcove. His golden helmet, impassive and eternal, seemed to turn towards me. I felt a cold dread, a psychic pressure that had nothing to do with the throne's broadcast. I quickly typed unspecified psychic anomaly and resumed my work, my heart hammering against my ribs. But the question remained, a seed of heresy planted in the fertile ground of my soul. Asterisk. Why? The records state we are the silent scribes of the Emperor's vigil. We are told our work is sacred, a holy duty to bear witness to the master of mankind's ultimate sacrifice. We are the ears that listen to the god's pain, so that others may live in blissful ignorance. A noble purpose, they say. But is it? Or are we just carrion birds, feeding on the psychic decay of a dying god? Are we wardens of a tomb, meticulously cataloging the groans of the buried, pretending it's a song? I look at the archives, vast data stacks that rise into the oppressive gloom, disappearing into a darkness that even the luminorbs cannot penetrate. Millennia of transcribed screams. A library of agony, a testament to an entire species' foundation of suffering. We are told the Emperor suffers for us all. But who suffers for him? We, who must listen. Last cycle, a scribe in the Delta Wing, a young man from a hive world, finally broke. He stood up from his station, his face pale and slick with sweat, and he began to scream. But his screams were not his own. He was channeling the throne, his voice a distorted, amplified echo of the psychic mill. Custodes were there in an instant. They didn't use their guardian spears. A tech priest accompanied them, and with a series of clicks and whirs, simply deactivated him. His augmetics went silent, his body slumped, and he was dragged away. A servitor was in his place before the echo of his borrowed scream had faded. No one acknowledged it. We just kept transcribing. The incident itself was an entry. Scribe Omega, 912 Delta. Biofunction ceased. Unit failure. Replacement installed. That was it. An entire life, an entire mind, shattered by the weight of this place, reduced to a single, sterile line of text. Another record to be filed away and forgotten. This place devours everything. Hope, sanity, even prayer. I've seen new scribes, fresh from the Schola Pergenium, filled with faith. They would whisper prayers as they worked, prayers to the emperor they served. But the prayers always fade. How can you pray to a being when you are immersed in the raw, unfiltered proof of its unending torture? It's like trying to offer water to a drowning man. The act becomes a mockery. Here, beneath the palace, even prayers are devoured. The question still burns. Asterisk why? Asterisk, is this vigil? Or is it a conspiracy of silence? Are we preserving a sacred sacrifice? Or are we hiding a terrible truth? The truth that the throne is failing. The truth that the screams are getting louder, more desperate. The truth that the being we call the Emperor is perhaps no longer the man he was, but something else. A nexus of pain, a psychic black hole that will one day consume us all. I look down at my dead. Another spike. This one sharper, more defined. It's not a question this time. It's a name, a memory, perhaps. A ghost in the machine. I shouldn't. It's a deviation. It's a death sentence, but my fingers move, driven by a desperate need for meaning. For some sign that this is not all for nothing. I type the name, a single word, a relic from a forgotten age, appearing on my screen amidst the litanies of pain. And in the silence of my alcove, surrounded by the ghosts of 10,000 years of agony, I feel a flicker of something I haven't felt in centuries. It is Sonato. It is not faith, it is defiance. The defiance of a single scribe, questioning the silence of terror. I don't know if this record will ever be seen, or if I will be deactivated before the next shift. But for a single moment, I was not just a recorder of screams. I was a listener, and I heard. My work continues. The screams do not cease, but now they sound different. They sound like a story waiting to be told, not just endured. And I will keep listening, because someone has to. Until next time, may the Emperor protect, and may you never have to hear what I hear. But today, we arrive at the very center of it all, at the source of the light that guides humanity across the stars. Today, we talk about Imagine the universe as a vast, dark ocean, racked by invisible, violent storms. This is the warp, the psychic dimension that makes interstellar travel possible, but also incredibly perilous. Without a lighthouse, a ship would be lost in an instant, its crew driven mad by demonic whispers, its hull torn apart by psychic tempests. For the 10,000 years since the Horus Heresy, humanity has had such a lighthouse. It is a psychic beacon of unimaginable power, a single, brilliant star shining out from Holy Terra. This is the Astronomican, the Emperor's light. Every Imperial vessel, from the mightiest battleship to the humblest freighter, is crewed by a navigator. These are mutants, individuals born with a third eye that allows them to perceive the currents of the warp. And what they seek in that roiling chaos is the steady, unwavering beam of the It is their North Star, their point of reference in a realm where time and space have no meaning. Without it, the Imperium of Man, a million worlds scattered across the galaxy, would shatter into 1,000 isolated, helpless kingdoms. Trade would cease, reinforcements would never arrive. Communication would die. The Imperium would, in a word, fall. But this light is not a machine. It does not burn on its own. It is fueled by the most precious resource the Imperium has. Human souls. The power that fuels this beacon is generated by the Emperor of Mankind himself, seated upon the golden throne. Yet, even the Master of Mankind cannot project this light alone. His psychic might is immense, a psychic Everest, but it is raw, unfocused. It needs a lens, a choir, to give it voice and direction. This is where the story turns from one of technological marvel to one of grim, unending sacrifice. Deep beneath the Himalayan mountains on Terra, within the sprawling complex of the Imperial Palace, lies the chamber of the Here, in a vast, echoing hall, sit thousands of the Imperium's most powerful human They are the Adeptus Astronomica, the choir of the These are not just any They are the ones deemed too powerful, too unstable for any other role, yet pure of heart and strong of will. They are brought from every corner of the galaxy aboard the infamous black ships, their lives given over to a single, sacred purpose. They are seated in banks of arcane machinery, their bodies wired into the psychic apparatus of the great chamber. They are blindfolded, their senses turned inward, away from the physical world and towards the psychic immensity of the Emperor's will. And there, they begin to sing. It is not a song of words, but a hymn of pure thought, a chorus of psychic energy. They take the raw, incandescent power of the Emperor and shape it, focus it, and project it out into the warp. Their minds are the lens, their collective will, the focusing crystal. Think about the sheer mental fortitude required. They are not just singing, they are standing at the edge of a psychic supernova. The Emperor's power is so vast, so overwhelming, that it would annihilate any single mind that tried to channel it. But together, as a choir, they can bear the strain. They join their minds into a single psychic gestalt, a unified consciousness that can withstand the divine inferno. Their hymn is the melody that transforms raw psychic noise into the pure, guiding light of the Astronomican. But this service is not without its price. The strain of channeling such power is unimaginable. The psychic fire they wield is also the fire that consumes them. Day by day, their minds and souls are eroded, burned away like a candle wick. They give everything, their thoughts, their memories, their very essence too. The eternal song, one by one, their voices in the choir fall silent. Their bodies slump in their thrones, empty husks, their souls utterly consumed by the light they helped create. The process is slow, agonizing. It can take months, sometimes years. An adept might feel their childhood memories flaking away like old paint, the face of their mother, the taste of their first meal, the feeling of sun on their skin. All of it is fuel for the fire. They become hollowed out, their personalities dissolving until nothing is left but the will to sing. And then, finally, even that is gone. They become a final, brief flare in the beacon before winking out of existence entirely. When a chorister falls, they are quietly removed. There is no ceremony, no grand funeral. Their sacrifice is silent, anonymous, and their place is immediately taken by another. The black ships are always arriving, bringing fresh psychers to Terra, fresh fuel for the fire. The choir must never falter. The hymn must be eternal. For if the song were to stop, even for a moment, the light would dim, and untold thousands of ships across the galaxy would be lost in the darkness. The Imperium's logistics would grind to a halt. Its armies would be stranded, and worlds would be left defenseless. This is the grim reality at the heart of the Imperium. The guiding light that allows humanity to survive is powered by a continuous, horrific sacrifice. Thousands of souls are burned away every year, their lives rendered down to a few fleeting moments of psychic energy. They are the unsung martyrs, the forgotten heroes, whose names will never be known. They are born, they are trained, they sing, and they die. That is the entirety of their existence. And so we come to the central, haunting question of this entire saga. The Emperor, trapped in his living death upon the Golden Throne, is the source of this power. The choir channels it, hebes it form. But does he hear their song? Does the master of mankind, in his state of near death, feel the souls of his subjects burning out in his service? Does he see the thousands upon thousands of lives sacrificed to maintain his light? The priests of the Ministorum would say yes. They would say the Emperor is a benevolent God who watches over all his subjects, that he feels their sacrifice and honors it. They preach that to die in the service of the Astronomican is the most glorious fate a psyker can achieve, to become one with the Emperor's holy light. To them, the hymn is a prayer, and the Emperor hears every note. It is an act of supreme faith, a testament to humanity's devotion. But others, more cynical minds within the Inquisition or the Adeptus Mechanicus, might disagree. They see a biological and psychic machine. The Emperor is the power source, the psychers are the conduits, and the Astronomican is the result. Does a power plant hear the coal being shoveled into its furnace? To them, the Emperor is a broken, dying man, a corpse on a throne whose psychic death throes just happen to be useful. In this view, the hymn is not a prayer. It is the scream of fuel being consumed by an unthinking engine. The Emperor does not answer because he cannot. There is nothing left to answer. And yet, the choir continues. Regardless of the truth, whether the Emperor is a god who listens or a corpse who does not, the adepts still take their seats. They still close their eyes, join their minds, and sing. They sing because the alternative is oblivion. They sing because a million worlds depend on their voices. They sing into the void, offering their very souls to a silent god or an indifferent machine. This is the ultimate expression of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. It's not about glory or heroism in the traditional sense. It's about duty, sacrifice, and endurance in the face of utter horror. The eternal hymn of the Astronomican is the perfect metaphor for the Imperium itself. A colossal, gilded, and Gothic structure built upon a foundation of countless, anonymous dead. A desperate song sung into the darkness, hoping for an answer that may never come. The series closes where it began in light, but now we see it not as a symbol of hope, but as a funeral pyre. It is a light that devours. It is the brilliant, beautiful, and terrible glow of 10,000 souls burning at once, a constant, silent scream that holds the darkness at bay for just one more day. The Emperor does not answer, but still, we sing.